Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us for another segment of Health Professional Radio. In this segment, we're going to be speaking with Josh Budman. He's joining us here as Senior Vice President, Research and Incubation at NetHealth. He's going to talk about some new research that revealed AI, or artificial intelligence, could save the healthcare industry about $360 billion a year. Welcome to Health Professional Radio. Josh Budman, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much, Neil, and it's a pleasure talking to you today. I look forward to it.
Great. Give us a little bit of background information on you and talk about your role as it relates to AI.
Certainly. So I came to NetHealth through an acquisition. So I when I give my background, I like to kind of start there from the beginning, going back to the roots of how I got to the company. So right out of college, I was a biomedical engineer from Johns Hopkins. I did my master's at a program called CBID, Center for Bioengineering Innovation and Design. And in that program, we basically rotated through, it was in the biomedical engineering department. So we were all engineers. We rotated through different clinical areas and tried to identify areas of clinical need. Basically, which areas in medicine were the most ripe for engineering style innovation. So what myself and my future co-founder of the company we started, Kevin Keenahan, discovered is that specifically skin conditions and very specifically chronic wounds were being measured by rulers. So if you think of a chronic wound, that could be anything like a diabetic ulcer or pressure injury, any of those things. And you think about an organic object like a wound being quantified, its progress being quantified by a ruler. It's a very, very archaic and inaccurate process. So we decided to inject some AI and machine learning into that problem space. And what we ended up doing is developing this set of AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms applied to the realm of computer vision. That's the ability to train computers to see, to be able to measure chronic wounds very, very accurately over time. So just with a simple smartphone application and a picture with a smartphone, you could quantify how these wounds were changing over time. And we did what we could to integrate that technology as well as possible with clinical workflows. And that company that we started was called Tissue Analytics. Tissue Analytics was acquired by NetHealth. We started it in 2014. It was acquired by NetHealth in 2020. I was serving as CTO when we were acquired, and I effectively stepped on to NetHealth in the role of VP of Analytics, where I was overseeing all AI and machine learning innovation for the company through its various product lines, and now have taken a broader role, not only in the AI machine learning realm, but also overseeing business intelligence, as well as our patient engagement suite. So very much, hopefully, you can see, Neil, in the sweet spot of where this discussion is going to go.
Now, obviously, $360 billion is an eye-opening sum. What is it about AI? I mean, the accuracy, the precision, of course, is obviously a factor. But what is it that's going to save the healthcare industry overall that type of money simply by implementing AI?
Yeah, I think the reason that number is so staggering is kind of tied to a lot of the inefficiencies that, at least in this case, the McKinsey study brought to light. You know, I think even though healthcare is intended to be standardized across different disciplines and across different parts of the country, it's not. You'll see very different workflows, both in the realm of clinical documentation as well as in the realm of clinical practice, if you go to different facilities. And so I think the amount of efficiency that artificial intelligence serves to add to this space is, and standardization, you know, if you think about taking a lot of processes that were that are somewhat subjective and potentially subject to what we call inter-rater error, so where one expert clinician might say one thing and another expert clinician would say a completely different thing about the exact same case, and you inject a very accurate and objective set of algorithms that are trained on a large set of data into that problem, you'd expect to see a lot of that standardization brought to bear and a lot of efficiency gained from that standardization. The other thing that I'd like to mention when it comes to savings is around the space of documentation. So there's a stat that providers spend roughly 2 to 3 hours, and I would suspect sometimes even more, of their days simply documenting their patient cases. So even in the very specific use case of applying some machine learning algorithms to the automation of documentation and saving that time so that providers can spend more time with their patients, and in a fee-for-service arena, that throughput is key. It's the main performance indicator of a practice. Being able to create those time savings with machine learning algorithms in the space of documentation could create immense savings in that arena as well. So you combine those two things, the standardization of diagnoses or decisions that were at one point subjective and not standardized, as well as efficiencies in the realm of documentation and administrative tasks. And you can see some massive savings, especially when you further combine that with the amount that we're spending in the amount of U.S. healthcare dollars that are spent each year.
Talk about some of the challenges to more widespread adoption of AI.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the trajectory that AI and machine learning in healthcare, especially digital health, have taken over the last few years, it follows a traditional hype cycle. So I think what you saw is when the machine learning models that are being used became a lot more mature and sophisticated, digital health innovators and healthcare innovators were starting to try to apply those to some of the more complex problems. And I think what we saw there is that it's actually very, very hard to solve very complex problems in healthcare. And what I mean by that specifically is that when you think about a complex problem in healthcare, you think about a complex diagnosis. Obviously, when you're making a complex diagnosis, implicitly the risk is higher, and specifically the risk of misdiagnosis becomes at the forefront of the conversation. And so machine learning models applied to very, very complex problems are hard to understand and observe sometimes. Sometimes they'll require much stiffer regulation around them. Of course, we see the role the FDA is starting to play in regulating some of these AI and machine learning applications. And additionally, it's just harder to prove. If you look at the article, the McKinsey article that came out, it shows that there's just a paucity of evidence when it comes to actually validating some of these models. And what that actually means is that these products and machine learning features are being validated in very small patient sample sizes. Mm-hmm. I just think that innovators have kind of started, I guess, a few years ago, underestimating the size and complexity of some of these problems. So I think what we're seeing now is that slope of enlightenment is what we're starting to navigate of the traditional hype cycle, where we're starting to, instead of applying machine learning models to some of the more complex problems and seeing some of those adoption barriers due to just the sheer complexity of validating and the risk associated with them, we're starting to apply some of these models to a bit more basic problems to solve. And I think that's really the way to kind of navigate this innovation space, is to start applying these models to less complex problems first and as a way to curtail some of those initial challenges.
How is NetHealth currently using AI in its solutions, specifically in the area of wound care?
Yep. So Tissue Analytics, the company that I started, is one of the product lines at the company, and we're still using Tissue Analytics. We're still selling that, marketing it broadly. It's being used by tons of facilities across the country to be able to objectively document and measure progress of skin conditions. We've also, in 2020, 2021, released a set of predictive models that are able to predict exactly how well a wound will heal in 4, 8, 12, and 16 weeks. And then recently we've released a set of models, like I said, kind of going back to the traditional hype cycle, more in the realm of operational analytics, where we're able to actually predict the risk of a patient missing their visit. And so you can tell from a patient's demographics, as well as some basic info about how far the patient lives from the facility and a bunch of other subject matter specific parameters, how likely a patient is to miss their appointment, which is kind of the king in a fee-for-service arena. And another model we just released is being able to predict the risk of a patient's limb being amputated as a result of a wound. So a mixture of clinical and operational models that we hope fit nicely into where we see the adoption curve being in the AI machine learning space in healthcare.
Is there a website where our listeners can go and get more information about NetHealth?
Absolutely. So www.nethealth.com. It's just our company page, and there is a whole set of sections about the different analytics we're doing and the different ways we're applying data science to healthcare problems in our electronic health record products.
Great. Josh, been a pleasure speaking with you. I'm hoping that you'll come back and talk with us as things progress there at NetHealth. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Neil. Pleasure to talk to you.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Josh Budman. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Health Professional Radio.